It's Louise Bedford, your host of the Talking Trading podcast. I'm so excited to see you here today. Each week, I aim to bring you expert trading tactics so that you can excel in the markets. Now, I wanted to mention that I had a chat with a friend of mine at the gym. We were huffing and puffing together. His name's Andy. And I started discussing with him how rare it is for people to actually talk about financial literacy with their children. Now, Andy introduced me to a book that I read and I loved, and I have invited the co-author of this book, Jai Hobbs, onto the show to talk about financially literate youth. So the book's name is Fly, and it's actually a handbook for life's important financial decisions and milestones from high school and beyond. Jai, welcome to the show. It's fantastic that you wrote this book with your wife. Tell us a little bit about your background.
Yeah, hey Louise, thanks for having me on board. Super excited to be here today. So I've got a background in finance, so mainly lending, been in the industry about 17, 18 years. The wife's a lawyer by trade, so we've come from, I suppose, the corporate side of life. Fair bit of experience in business and property as well, but we really wrote this book to give back and to give a handbook for all those things that most of us learn by mistake and by trial and error, and hopefully we can avoid those mistakes for people that pick it up and read it.
I love it. And I know that your book covers almost every age from high school and beyond. It's actually the book I wish I have had when I left home, because how good would that have been to actually know how to open up a bank account? Could you give us a little bit more of a background about the words financial literacy, because I'd really like your definition.
Yeah, look, financial literacy, and there's many ways to put it, but financial literacy is the ability to understand and effectively use various financial skills, including personal financial management, budgeting, and investing. So obviously you cover very well the investing side of life. We're probably more focused on that earlier stage of that, which is the financial management and the budgeting. And while often it's a pretty boring and unenjoyable part, it is, we'll all agree, it is an essential part of knowing the numbers and knowing where you're going so that you can put those plans in place. So the biggest thing that we found is that, and I found personally, is I left school not having a clue. So we wanted to put that into a handbook that people could relate to, that's in layman's terms, that actually makes sense, and they can pick it up and just relate to that section of their life and where they are at the moment, be it opening a bank account, renting a property, starting a business, buying their first home, wherever they might be in that stage of life.
Fantastic. You know, I've found, I'm a parent, and I know a lot of the people listening to this show are parents as well, that we can have such a big influence on the money scripts that we pass on to our children. So when I was a child, I do remember hearing mum and dad talking about money, and some of it was overt, but some of it was absolutely subconscious. Can you give us an idea how, as parents, we can positively influence the money scripts for our children?
Yeah, look, you make a very, very good point there, Louise. That positive talk and that positive mindset, not just money, the entire part of our life, it goes a long way, yeah? So we find in every part of our life, the more we think and we act positive, the better the results. Not a coincidence, it's just life. So making that and ensuring that we're making a choice. It's not the negative approach of I can't afford that. It's I choose not to do that, and understanding that choice and what the consequences are. And personally, from having two young boys myself, taking the time to explain why we're making that choice, why we're not buying that new car or buying that and going on that 6-week holiday that some of their friends might be doing, and what that choice of us not doing that allows us to do in the other end, or invest in the future so that we can do that. We have the freedom and the choice to do that when we wish, how we wish into the future. So I definitely think that positive self-talk with our kids, and also taking the time to explain it, because they don't know. It's their first run at this. It's our first run at this. So we've just got a few more years on them. So just making sure we explain to them why we're making that choice and what that means in the long run.
Yeah, I love that. Look, in preparation for this interview, I was actually researching as well and finding out a little bit more about money scripts and some of the things that we say as parents. One of the aspects that I do want to highlight is that sometimes we speak differently to our children depending on their gender. Now, this is unfortunate because apparently, and this is based on the research, and I'm going to put all of this information into the show notes. So if you want to go further, you can research that into the show notes for this episode. Unfortunately, and here is the root of the problem, in interviews with more than 100 school-aged children with the average age of 10, parents talk to their girls about spending money, earning, family finances, and checking the balance of their bank accounts. So all sort of home-based type of activities, whereas boys are more likely to be taught about savings, borrowing, and budgeting. So this is according to Lindsay Romo, and this is quite a big area because I do think we need to be really aware about gender differences. I'm really pleased to see that your book does address that we need to cover all of these areas regardless of the gender of the child involved. Have you heard about any of this research, Jai? And what is your involvement and thoughts about this?
Oh, look, I think the day and age we live in these days, everything is equal. There's plenty of families and households that the female's the primary income earner and the male's taking the responsibility of looking after the children. So I think we're long past the stereotypical the wife or the mum stays at home and looks after the kids and the husband goes to work. We need to be open and that's working towards and what we believe in our household we practice, like what's your strengths? What are you strong at? Together as a team, how do we divvy up these tasks so we can work together for a common goal? I think really playing on that, and I completely agree. I don't think we should teach boys and girls differently because boys and girls have different. Each individual has different skill sets regardless of their gender.
Yeah, it's so true. And one of the things I think that we really do need to discuss with our children is the thought that who we marry is one of the biggest financial decisions of our entire lives. I'd love your thoughts on that. I know that sometimes when spouses get involved in a relationship, they want different things out of the relationship financially, and that can create friction. What are your views about that?
Oh, look, definitely. Apart from the obvious cost of divorce, both emotionally and financially, that goes without saying. But being on the financial page, I'm sort of lucky enough in this question to have a finance business, and we see it day in, day out of people being on the same page and the result there, and then people being in different directions and also the result there. But financial stress can be one of the biggest stresses in someone's life, and if we relate it back to the simple needs of roof over our head, food on the table, if we're not on the same page there, one wanting to grow the wealth and invest in the future and the other one wanting to have a good time and live it all now, that can create massive division. So being on the same page is paramount. And also, I'm sure we can all relate in the stage of life that we're in, where when we were younger, no kids, sometimes no serious career, no business, we thought life was tough. If I could go back then, I'd slap myself really hard. Because if you add kids, house, mortgage, career, business, investing, all that on top of that, we realised that life was pretty good. So making sure we're on the same page at the start sets us up for the long term so that we can grow in all areas together. And probably most importantly, and what we're really big about, is living a fulfilled life. Happy sometimes gets thrown around a little bit too much, in my opinion, because as humans, stress is a good amount of stress is good for us. So it's more about being fulfilled rather than, in my opinion, rather than being
I'm
happy.
glad you mentioned that. Honestly, I know there is so much happiness research, and I'm all for that positive psychology movement initiated by Martin Seligman. But this pursuit of individual happiness has perhaps gone a bit too far. Fulfillment is a much more worthy goal for sure. But what if you're not on the same page? What if you're in a couple situation and you're not seeing eye to eye? What are your thoughts about that?
Oh, look, I think you have to have an open and honest conversation about that. So just sit down and be very clear, because your life partner, it's not just only the good times, it's the bad times. And if you want to add kids and children and household into that mix, if you're not on the same page financially, unfortunately, money is part of everyone's life. Fortunately or unfortunately, it's a part of everyone's life on a daily basis, and we can't ignore it. And probably understanding, in my opinion, that money, it's not, some people look at it as evil. It's not evil. It provides choice. It's a currency for choice, time and choice. So maybe some people are just looking at the money part the wrong way by seeing it as evil, maybe due to past experiences. But just understanding what do they want long term, and money's a vehicle to get us there.
Yeah. And I do think if you're a trader and you don't have the full support of your spouse, that you really do need to consider drawing your support from other avenues, for goodness sake. Like, you don't have to go this alone. This is not something that you need to trailblaze here. You need to find other people who are on your side so that you can draw from their strength and from their energy. I think that is a really critical point as well. Now, sometimes when we are parents, or even uncles or aunts or significant adults in a child's life, we can watch them go through some financial hardship. And when I'm saying children, I'm not necessarily meaning younger children here. I'm thinking about early adulthood. How do we manage that as that caring adult? How do we make sure that we don't just step in and take over, but we can also be heard by that person?
Yeah, once again, great question. Like, it's hard, isn't it? Like, finding that perfect balance. If you can figure it out, please let me know. But look, in my opinion, we all learn by a little bit of trial and error, and we have, as humans, over evolution, millions and millions of years. So I think with our kids, we've got to give them enough rope to learn and understand, and sort of tread their own path, so to speak, but not hang themselves. So I think being supportive of your children, making sure that they know that if it really hits the fan, you're there, you will support. But then again, guiding them, setting those principles in place, but they have to make their own decisions. And look, there's how many, 8 billion people in this world, so we can't kid ourselves and think that our way is the highway. Our way is our way, and that's not always right for every person. But as long as we can give them those principles, and what we've tried to do in the book, to add the basics, so that arms them with the knowledge to go and make those choices moving forward.
Yeah, I love that. So education really counts. And probably from the psychology point of view, because, I've got 4 years of psychology in my background, so I can't help but bring it into every single aspect of my life, is I think to have some ready-made statements so that you can, when you're hit with a bit of a shock, Mum, I think I'm going to go bankrupt, or whatever the case is, because sometimes that can actually really impact us as that caring adult, to have a standard statement that you can say. So here's one that I overuse one heck of a lot. I say, tell me more. No matter what they say, no matter what calamity they're bringing up, I want to make sure that communication is open, to keep that discussion going, and to perhaps unravel, pull on that thread, understand what that jumper is made of, because I think sometimes we jump in with solutions before we have the full information from our younger person in front of us. We know the solution, we've been there, hey, look, aren't we clever? But that's not what we're trying to do here. We're trying to equip and arm that younger person with the skills so that they can learn from this. They won't make the same mistake again. As my friend Dr. Alexander Elder said, don't step on the same rake twice, and that they can find their way through this labyrinth. So I do think we need to be careful that we don't just automatically jump in. Now, there's a part in your book which I just loved. It's on page 41. So everybody following along, if you do already have a copy of Fly, turn to page 41. It's the 50, 30, 20 rule. Jai, can you tell me more about that?
Yeah. It's, some people know it as buckets, but it's 50% of your income on things that you need, essentials that you need to survive. So be it a roof over your head, food on the table, transport to get to work, whatever the case may be, and what is your need. 30% is on your wants, so your entertainment, your clothing, things that you can do without, but hey, they're good, yeah? And then 20% in saving, in my opinion, savings in earlier life, but obviously investing. Yeah. So if we can prioritize that from a very simplified scenario, 50, 30, 20, one, it essentially make sure we're not overspending. If we're spending more than 50% of our income on our needs, we're probably living beyond them. And also with our saving or investing, are we doing that from a young age? And I don't know about you, Louise, but I wish I got started a little bit earlier. And I'm sure everyone's the same. The earlier we can start our kids on that, the better off they'll be in the long term when the eighth wonder of the world kicks in with compound interest.
Yeah, that compounding is so important. Tell me more about that.
Yeah, it's the eighth wonder of the world, and look, it can be your best friend or your worst enemy. And unfortunately, in our business, we see it both ways. But compound interest, it is. Everyone's called it the eighth wonder of the world. Warren Buffett's called it the eighth wonder of the world. Like it is. It is so powerful, but it takes time for it to take effect. So our book educates people on the good part of it, which is obviously the more the direction that you're in investing and growing that nest egg over time. And it also touches on the bad part of it, be it credit card debts, buy now, pay later, car loans, things like that, where we're borrowing for depreciating assets, and what is the true cost of that asset over the lifetime. So just understanding can be best friend, your worst enemy.
And it can impact people's lives, can't it? You know, when you look at, I've got a particular friend, it just seems that she is an overspender. It's almost like she loves abundance too much and she has to have it all in her house at this very moment. And it has impacted her credit report. Now, I'm not all that familiar with how credit reports work, but I know they're very important. Can you give us a bit more information about credit reports and what we can do to positively impact our own credit scores?
Yeah, definitely. So credit reporting in Australia about 2 years ago became what we call comprehensive credit reporting. So typically it's handled by two companies, Equifax and Experian. The majority of the lenders and suppliers look at Equifax. That's the majority that's used in Australia. Now, credit reports traditionally used to be what we call negative reporting only. So they would only show the really bad stuff if something went to default or to bankruptcy. So unless you were really bad, things were pretty good. Yeah. 2 years ago, going to, and the US has been doing this for years, but we've moved more towards what they call comprehensive. So it shows every loan or credit that you've applied for in the last 5 years. It shows all the loans you've got at the moment, the last 24 months worth of repayments on those loans. It shows buy now, pay later accounts, so Afterpay, Zip Pay, Open Pay, all that stuff. It also shows for self-employed people, ATO liabilities or tax debts are going to be on there as well. So really these days, there's nowhere to hide. It is all there. Anytime you look for credit, so be it for a home loan, a business loan, credit card, even electricity account, phone account, when you're read a Privacy Act, and if you're asked to sign a Privacy Act, there's a good chance they're using that to go and have a look at your credit file. Yeah, so a good idea, you can sign up. Equifax, in my opinion, is the better one. Sign up, you can get alerts when someone has a look at your credit file, they'll send you an email. There is a credit score. Yeah, now your credit score is, and like I mentioned, we've got a finance business where majority of that is lending. So it's what we do all day, every day. So lenders look at your credit score. If your credit score is bad, you've got to go to a non-conforming lender, which means a higher interest rate. So really understand that, sign up, make sure that you get notified when someone has a look at your credit file. Good ways to increase that, pretty simple. Yeah, pay your bills on time. Make sure you're paying your loans on time, your credit cards. Don't forget about stuff like that, like be on the ball about it. When you're applying for a loan, if you're looking for a loan, shameless plug here, use a broker, but more so make sure that you're only applying once. Don't go and apply at 5 different banks because they will each have a look at your credit file. The more inquiries you have, the less your credit score will be.
Because it looks like you're shopping around.
It does. Yep. So shop. I'm not saying don't shop around. Of course, make sure you get the best deal, but don't apply. Understand what the deal is first before you sign any Privacy Act. And make sure when you're talking to either be it the broker or the bank, say, I just want to be sure you're not lodging any applications and you're not checking my credit file yet, because I want to protect my credit score. So be open about that conversation up front. And then just make sure you pay your stuff on time. If with your defaults and your bills, get them sent to email. You know, if you move around a little bit, you change address. That's probably the most common. People change address, don't get the mail, don't pay it, ends up in a default. If you do get a default on your credit file, it stays on there for 5 years, even if you pay it. It's a pain in the butt. So be really diligent around that credit file, because if you want to borrow money, it is, you know, margin lending, home loans, commercial property, business lending, it's all relates back to that.
And it does relate to traders as well, because as traders, we do have to make sure that we cover every contingency. One of the aspects that I think is really prevalent is the way we do one thing is the way we do everything. So if you can make sure that your credit information is up to date and that everything has a total A+ in terms of that scorecard, then you're in a better position to trade effectively. I found a lot of my traders, they get clogged up if they've got a financial situation that's on their mind and they're not as effective in the markets because of it. So that's why we bring you guests like Jai, so that you can actually think through these issues for yourself and you can excel in the markets. And also, talking about your kids is fun, hey? So if we were going to work with our children's schools, because some of my listeners have got children that are school age and they're looking to improve that entire community, what are some of the things we can do to work with our child's school to improve our children's financial literacy?
Oh, I think that's a joint effort. Like, as parents, we can't expect that that's the school's problem, that they're going to teach them about financial literacy. I think it starts at home, and then school is there to back it up. And I think if we can look at that as a joint effort, that's step one. You know, we can't expect either side's going to do it wholly and solely. Getting kids into the budgeting thing early, like as early as 6 to 7 years old, like, in my opinion, is great. You know, they start to understand what money is. We started there very simply early. Pocket money, 50% spend, 50% save. Simple, half and half. You can go and buy whatever you want with that, but you've got to save that part. And as they progress, it then works around setting goals for things that kids want. You know, so be it a new motorbike, a new surfboard, you can tell I've got boys, setting those goals around what they want. And we've used the you save half, we pay half mentality. So, hey, we're contributing, but we want you to contribute something as well.
Yeah. I do like that. Actually, with my family, what we've done for my children is that when they turn 16, they get an allowance, and we give them, it's not like pocket money, it's an allowance. And out of that, they have to buy everything 100%, because by then they're working a job. Yep. So that importance of having that mindset, the tax goes, you know, sometimes there's some unexpected expenses and you have to budget for those unplanned eventualities, as well as thinking of your future. That has worked really well. The other thing, when my kids were younger, and I'd love your thoughts on this, is that if they wanted like a set of designer jeans, for example, my husband and I would pay for the Target level, and they'd have to put in the extra money, because I feel that it is our job to be quite firm as parents and to make sure that we are instilling those ideas about basic wants and needs. So is it a want or is it a need? And that differentiation, that's where the extra money comes in. Yeah. Do your boys want designer surfboards, or is that just not a problem in your household because you've discussed it so much?
Oh yeah, no, of course they do. They're like every other kid. And it's funny, you know, we've got two boys. One will be fine. He's the younger one. He saves all his money, never wants to spend it. If he has to spend his money, he's no. The other one, he's like, what do I need money for? I'll just go and buy it. I don't need any money. So it's amazing the psychology of different people, and everyone's different. Yeah, the different psychology, and that's where, bringing on the point you brought before, we can't treat people, even if they're the same sex, differently when it comes to the basics. We all need to know the basics. Like, we all need to know how to walk. Whether someone decides to run a marathon or run 50 meters down the road, that's up to them. But the basics need to be there. So what we've tried to cover is the basics, give you the base knowledge, and then whichever direction you choose to go on from there is up to you.
And I think just to normalize it as well, I think it's so important that we discuss these things over the dinner table. So often we're saying, how was your day? And things can get stale with that dinner conversation. So bringing in some things like, what is it that you're really wanting? What are you looking to work towards? How much money do you think you're going to need for this? How much money do you think this house is? That's the type of thing I think that can really raise awareness. Sometimes I think we do ourselves an injustice by trying to hold back from our children. To say that I choose not to buy is a much more difficult thing to suggest rather than, we can't afford it. I remember when we had the choice to say, well, is Santa going to be the one to bring the swing set? Hell no. Santa brings the little things. We bring the big things because we choose to. We choose that swing set for you. So it depends on your family, doesn't it? Yeah. What are the main pieces of advice that you are hoping will come out of your book?
Oh, look, the simple part is knowing and understanding your budget. So what gets measured gets managed. Unfortunately, there's just so much people, and once again, we see it every day, they've got no idea what they spend. So just that very basic level of knowing and understanding the budgeting. Ideally, if we can get that instilled, investing early, as I mentioned before, which you and your listeners are all over. But get started early, get your kids started early. We've started educating our kids even at 8 years old around, hey, this is shared. We've got a little account for them, so we're going, okay, this is yours. This is how it's going to grow. And we check in with them on a monthly basis. And also, you just mentioned it before as well. So making finance a topic about it in your family. So don't sweep it under the carpet. Don't expect it's something they shouldn't have to worry about because they're kids or they're your children and it's your job. Take time to teach them the basics and be honest and open about it. I think if we can all do that as part of our family, no matter what stage we're at or what level we're at, I think that's going to set our kids up to better understand it and be able to make informed choices.
Look, I completely agree. I think there is so much to be said for sharing your vision with your children so that they can become a part of that family goal. I remember many years ago when I'd booked out our mentor program, which is our 6-month repeat for free mentor program to teach people about the markets. My husband and I sat back that night with a glass of red wine, and my child was at the dinner table, and I said to my child, I said, so why is it that you think Mum and Dad are so happy about booking out the mentor program? And this kid was 7 years old at the time. The answer that came out of their mouth astounded me. My child said, you're so happy because now the children of the people who come to your course will be able to get what I've got.
Wow.
And I just went, child, you have got it. This is exactly what I want. This is totally now a part of our family's goals so that we're all working together. And I said, what do you think it is that you've got that perhaps some other children don't have? Mum and Dad are home all the time. And I'm like, oh, this is going to make me cry. We get to go on holidays to places that we really find important to us. We get to spend time with our other family members instead of having to work a job the whole time. And it was such a beautiful little view into this kid's mind about the things that were a priority. So just because we're talking about money, I really urge you not to exclude your children because you think it's too adult. Do exactly what Jai is saying. Bring them into the conversation. Let them say what their hopes and dreams are. Work out how that you can position this so that they can achieve them and show them how they can scaffold their way into that using careful budgeting and using the best parts of money management. Jai, that's all we've got time for today. I would really love people to get in touch with you. You have so many valuable resources, and I do think I'm going to have to get you back on the show. So, Jai, tell us where we can get in touch with you.
So Financial Literate Youth, the website, so financialliterateteyouth.com.au. So they can get in touch. The book's available through all the usual mediums, be it Booktopia, Amazon. It's on Audible if you prefer to listen. And look, we ask if you do get a copy, give it to a family member, give it to a friend, give it to a school leaver, ideally, so you can set them up for what's coming.
I love it. Well, look, until next week, enjoy the markets. And if you have enjoyed this episode, show a friend how to get involved. Send them the URL, come to talkingtrading.com.au, copy the URL so that they can find that episode in particular, because I think this is something as parents and as caring adults we should be discussing in the community. We'll see you next week. Thanks so much, Jai.
Thanks, Louise.